Hey everyone, and welcome to a Time Shifters podcast interview special. Tom and I are here together. Tom, how are you?
Good. I'm glad
Oh,
you remembered me.
yeah. I hopefully by now you have all listened to our review of the film First Moon. Tom and I both really ended up enjoying that one, and we wanted to kind of get a little more insight in that film, look under the hood. So we have got the writer and director Peter McLeod with us today. Peter, thank you very much for joining us, and welcome to Time Shifters.
Thanks so much for having me, guys. I too, like hopefully your audience, have listened to your review of the film and was really pleasantly surprised with your takes on things. So I'm excited to delve in deeper about it.
I'm
Absolutely.
looking forward to it. Before we get into that, though, I just want to talk a little bit, get to know you, I guess, a little bit better. You are an Australian filmmaker. This First Moon was not your first feature film, I don't
That's
think, was it?
correct. No. Not first feature film directing, not my first time writing.
Okay, great. Um, I was just looking on like IMDb here, and I see a handful of things going back to like 2016. The Veiled, which is a short
Yep.
film, several short films. Legend of the Five, I think, was the first feature film that I saw listed. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's the first one where I was listed as the sole writer. Absolutely.
Gotcha. And I do believe that is available to stream here in the States. And I was going to actually watch that before we sat down, but the week got away from me.
That is a very different film with a very different audience. And I think a lot of the feedback from people came back of the type of adults who love fantasy films watched it and went, "What on earth is this?" It is very much a kids' film. I yeah, I heard back from the target audience. Actually, there was a small mom and pop theater that screened all their own films for their grandkids before watching them themselves and putting them out to the audience. And they'd actually passed this one out to their kids to show the grandkids. And when the grandkids came over to the grandparents' house, they actually said, "Can we watch it again?" The kids were 5 and
Nice.
7, and I went, "That is the demographic. They love it. Fantastic." So I definitely had a lot of a lot of flack from 40-year-olds going, "I don't get it." It's like it's probably
You
not for you. That's
you
okay,
weren't supposed
but
to. Thank you for the
we're supposed
feedback.
to. Um, but no, that one was definitely a lot of fun. And I was actually on set for that one as well as a script supervisor, and that was one of my, I think it was my second time on a feature of being there in the trenches, the long, long days, the never-ending weeks, and it didn't scare me off, so I came back for more.
Yeah, that's impressive. What got you into the filmmaking to begin with?
It was actually all about story. Um, I was a bit nomadic. I'd traveled around through Australia before eventually ending up in London. I was at a bit of a loss and I ended up being stuck on the tube. Anyone who lives in London will know that commuting to work is a fresh kind of torture. And my 45-minute tube ride could be anything from 45 minutes to 3 hours based
Ooh.
on rain or leaves on the track. And so I found myself trapped in very hot boxed shoulder to shoulder cubicle hell. And in that time, I just started doing Sudokus from free newspapers before I tried to bash my head out on the windowsills. And then eventually started just trying to do something creative to keep my sanity, which led to writing. I then went, look, I'd like to do this a bit more seriously. Ended up moving into comic books. Had a really lovely chat with Chris Claremont of X-Men fame,
Hmm.
absolutely incredible guy, Mike Carey, really generous creatives who kind of helped guide me in. And then when I moved back to Australia, I went, I need to not be in offices anymore. I need to not be doing the rat race. It's not who I am. And decided to formalize it, got myself into writing. I went, look, if I want to make my living as writing, my goodness, if I want to make my living as a writer, I need to sit down and find something that will actually turn a profit while still telling stories. And I went, look, the only industry for that is film. And film and comic books are very close in the way that you write the scripts, in the way that you visualize the mediums. And so I went, cool, let's knuckle down to that. And the more I studied, the more I practiced, the more I loved it. So I just, yeah, took off from there.
I hadn't really thought of that before, but when you're planning a film, you often do uh,
Storyboarding.
the storyboarding, and like that is very much comic book, uh, right
It
there.
literally is. I
Yeah.
wish I had them to show you, but I had storyboarded the entire film and kind of kept it to myself until about halfway through the shoot when I was describing something to our cinematographer, and he's like, "Do you mean like this? Do you mean?" I went, "Hang on a second." Pulled out my notepad, flicked to the scene, and showed him. And he just laughed his head off and screamed at me, "Where the hell have these been? I'd love to have gone through these with you." I was like, "Oh, I didn't want to show you my amateurish doodlings." And he went, "No, no, no, these are fantastic." And we then spent quite a time looking through them.
That's fantastic. What kind of comic books were you writing? Did you actually get to
Yeah.
do any like professional comic books or any of the work for any of the larger labels?
Not for the larger labels, but I have done work for and continue to do some work for a few smaller labels, indie labels. I do a lot of work with About Time Comics. We've got the books Godsend and In Flight Service, which are out and available, and a wonderful, very creative and offbeat UK artist who I met while I was out there. He and I did a thing called The Fist, which is an exploration of superhero insanity. And he's taking years of just he does very mixed media stuff. Like literally, I've got a piece on the wall it has bits of Polaroid photographs cut, stuck to it, parts of the original script stuck to it, coffee stained, lacquered, baked, beautiful pieces. And he spent years finally going through that, and we've now got the full thing together. He's actually about to launch a Kickstarter for the first issue of that, so that's coming up soon as well. So I still do touch on the comic book work when I get the time.
Gotcha. What how does one go from, okay, I want to be a writer, film is the way that, selling scripts for television and film. How do you get that foot in the door? Because you've got to be one in millions.
Yeah, it's real difficulty. And I think with my situation in particular, I was at a university studying it, going, look, if I over here there is a government system that can give you borderline payments in order to attend university. And so I was living off of 2 minute noodles and just going, look, if I can sit here in this little bubble for as long as possible, I've got time to practice my craft and I've got time to try and find that on ramp. And one of the things that existed when I got there was a small group of students who were writers meeting up with actors doing theatrical stuff. And I went, great, sign me up. And when I joined, all of the students who were there were in their final year. So they left, and it was me and two others left. I went, cool, well, let's keep going with this. But let's move it towards short film. Because that's what I want to learn.
Yeah.
Let's move in that direction. And it struggled, and it was a lot of hard work just to try and wrangle actors and wrangle writers and try and get people to do any part of the work, which then forced me to do my own kind of film school. But in doing that, I then worked a lot with the actors around, and the industry is so heavily based on networking. And so it's when you're doing a film, you are like people talk about it like we're going to war. Like before the last film, I actually went off and I was at the gym quite constantly to try and get myself in shape so I could endure the rigors of filmmaking. And so if you're going to go into that environment, you also need to know that the person who's got your shoulder is not a complete douchebag. And so you form these bonds with people, you try and help each other out. And then when one of you gets hit, if there's an opportunity, you turn around and go, hey. So in this case, I had a friend who was an actor who got through his work, got an agent. The agent then looked at branching out into small indie films, turned and gave him an opportunity to write an indie film while saying, oh, you're funny, we'd love to hear your voice more in this. And it's low budget, let's go. Because they were low budget, at the very last minute, they were going, we need all the roles filled with attachments, which is university kids, including up to some key positions. And then he turned to me and said, look, you've been on this journey with me, you know the entire process. They've just turned to me and said that they don't have a script supervisor. I've put your name forwards. And I've said, great, what does the script supervisor do? And then raced off and did a lot of work. And so that was Christmas Down Under. And so I was there on set, seeing it in real time. And again, working my absolute butt off.
Right.
Even just on the very first day, I was there working with the director, who was a lovely guy, and we found ourselves very short on time with the final half of the scene to go. A lot of moving parts, a lot of characters, but we were running 3 cameras. And in that moment, he sat down next to me and said, I don't know how the hell we're going to do this. And I looked at it and went, hang on a second. If we break it down into pockets of action, you've got basic 5-point coverage, but you've got 3 cameras. Had a bit of a beautiful mind moment, and he was ecstatic that I had the knowledge to be able to offer something up. Ran with it. We got the thing done, and we didn't go into overtime at all. And from that moment on, I think I got the adrenaline rush of, oh, I can do this. Okay, let's go.
That's amazing. And I love that notion of how you survive a hard situation is just by helping lift each other up.
It's the only way to do it. It's the
Yeah.
only way to do it. Because again, you find the people who are almost divas trying to get into an industry. And for the most part, unless you're at the top of your game and you can afford to say that, by I've got the clout and I've got the reputation, no one wants to work with a diva.
Hmm.
No.
Give me someone who's half as talented but is willing to put in the work and is nice about doing it, and we can get something done.
Right. Look for the person that yes, they're there to be the guy in front of the camera, but when you need to clean up the set for the night, they're the ones helping move the cables, put stuff in the van, that sort of.
To an extent, I mean, look, you've got to be careful. Even in the indie world, we've got a bit of a delineation. Like, there's, you turn to our crew and said, "Hey, let me carry your lights." They'd say, "These lights are worth more than you. Do not touch my lights." Like,
Yeah,
no,
good point. Good
no
point.
worries. But there's definitely an element of that can-do attitude. But even because, and again, getting into First Mate itself, the shoot was very grueling and very harsh conditions, and we put the actors through hell. And if at any moment on our short schedule, tight turnaround, if you turned to any of those actors and said, "Hey, we need to do this moment," and they went, "I'm not feeling it," what do? You're in deep
Right.
trouble.
Right.
So you need that actor to turn around and go, "Yes, absolutely," and let me throw myself in completely. Well, in our case with dear Lauren, let me throw myself into a dog cage with no padding on my butt and sit on the hard wire for 6 hours and not complain once. She got out. I'm like, "How are you doing?" She's like, "Oh, I'm all right. I think I got some bruises." I'm like, "What? Tell me about this as we go. We'll sort solutions." But no, we had a wonderful team of just can-do people, which, yeah, fantastic. Several key people. If one of them had worked half as hard, the whole film would have fallen apart.
Well, excellent. Well, this is as good as a segue since we started kind of naturally falling into it. We can go ahead and start talking a little bit about First Moon. Tom and I always walk into these independent films when we get these an opportunity to watch them, and there are often times where we go in with a little bit of trepidation, but with
Of
hope,
course.
because we have unfortunately been cursed with a few that.
Sir, I am a horror fan and I've listened to a number of your episodes. I absolutely agree. I share the sentiment. And it's why also when I see reviews with people saying the positive and the negative, very much able to take it in my stride because I know I've said the exact same things about other films.
Well, we try really hard to not dog on any film. There's been a couple where we just decided it was if you can't say anything nice, don't say anything at all. So we just kind of declined to actually even do a review. There's only one time where we watched something what we both thought was so bad, but I don't know why that film just annoyed me so much. I had to do my own little solo review. And that's probably the only one in years that I've really bagged on because I just feel like if I can save one more person from sitting down in front of this film.
Yes, we really do try to take the stance. We appreciate independent filmmakers anyways because you're putting out your heart. You're trying to get into this. You're trying to break in, do the best you can. And we applaud any effort at anyone making an attempt to do the thing that they love. So we appreciate that outright. But there are
I
some people that
love
need to be
that.
coaxed back to reality.
And yeah, it's one of those funny things because absolutely there are restrictions that bind our hands and things that
Sure.
change on the fly, and you have to do what you can. At the same time, there was an interview I remember, sorry, an interview, a review I saw of First Moon, where one of the main critiques was there's not enough of the creature. The creature should have been earlier and more prevalent throughout the film. I'm like, that is absolutely correct. And if you could foot the bill for that, sir, because
Yeah.
prosthetics are not cheap. We had 2 days in total of prosthetics, one with each version of the transformation. So we did not have a lot of time to get things done. We were working, and even in that, because of the restrictions, it's not just time shooting, it's time preparing. Poor Lauren, my goodness, on full moon day, she was in the chair, I think it was 10 to 11 hours in preparation to then work a full day just because we had that one day, that one shot. Let's get every scene with the full transformation now. Let's go.
And that was one
So
of the things I think we found very impressive an outing like this. The prosthetics and the finished look of the beast was actually very impressive.
I'm a massive fan of Thomas. He's a seasoned industry expert. He knows what he's doing, but also he got very excited. So in that early stage of talking about the creature and where we were going, it was wonderful. We sat down, we got introduced, talking over Zoom because he's based over in LA, and one of the first things he said to me was like, I feel like this it's werewolf adjacent, but you're not quite talking werewolf. What are you talking? I said, well, actually, I wanted to do something a bit differentiated. I did a bit of looking into, and I was inspired by a lot of information about skinwalkers. I said, are you familiar with
Okay.
skinwalkers? And he said, sir, I'm Native American. Let's talk deep turkey. And so we went deep into different options. He actually at one point got so excited, he said, wait on the call for 2 minutes. He ran off and came back, and I wished we'd had the opportunity to use this, but he came back with contact lenses that covered the entirety of his eyes made out of gold. And the
Wow.
reflective sheen was one of the creepiest damn things I had ever seen. And he's like, these are great. You can only wear them for about an hour at the time or it can start to cause damage. I'm like, we don't have the option for that. But my God, I want to use them. One day I'm going to come back to him. But
Oh,
he
I
actually
can't
came
wait to
out.
catch the film where he's like, I got an opportunity. How
He'll be
about
so happy. Oh, and that was the thing, having him out, and because he was in an Airbnb with myself and our cinematographer, and we had some of the wounds to work on, and he just had nowhere else to go. We were in the middle of nowhere in Australia, and no car, no opportunity to catch public transport places, so he was just there cooking. And I remember actually there was one day coming home, there's a character who at one point was going to have his foot cut off and he would be limping around without a foot. And he turned to me, he's like, that's hackneyed. We need a green screen sock. I want to flay it. I don't just want to flay it. I want to crucify his ankle with nails. I'm like, that sounds disgusting. Show me. And
let's do it.
you see the piece moving and the skin flaps around an artificial
Hmm.
tendon. And it's like, oh, this is what happens when you get someone who's passionate about their craft and give them the time to cook. I wish we'd had more time and more funds to give him because it would have been incredible.
Yeah, and you can help save me a little bit because there in our review, I could not for the life of me pronounce Thomas's last name.
Surprenant.
Supranon.
Yeah.
Thank you. I
See, and I say
butchered it.
that, and then he'll call me up and go, Peter, what are you talking about? That's not how you
Yeah.
but
My apologies to him for butchering it when I did the review.
oh look, it's always difficult with names. It's not a problem.
Please pass on my apologies.
We'll definitely do so.
Um, it's funny when you hear reviews of a film, from one person to another. You were just saying that the review you heard that oh no, the creature should have been in the whole film, and that was one of the things Thomas and I really kind of appreciated about the film is that it wasn't that it was the big build up to the creature.
Mhm.
So when it finally shows up, it's like, wow, this is the creature. We really like that aspect of the
I'm
film.
so glad. And that was actually part of the hope that I went for was going for that first stage, second stage to go, she's changed in here. And I know that from an indie sense, you see a creature and you go, okay, this is where they've put their funds, this is where they've got their time, this is what we're getting. And I wanted people to see that and go, oh, that's pretty cool. But still have that little bit of a niggle behind them. So I could then go, let's now have a change again. Let's show that this is a continual stage of, let's get that little bit of extra excitement of them going, oh, wait, no, there's more.
Hmm.
Yeah, and
It's
I'm glad we were able to do that.
and I think I appreciated the slow burn of it all, the fact that we don't even know what we're talking about at the beginning, and this is where pros or cons. We're expecting the werewolf, and we get something different because that seems to be the parlance that they're kind of talking about. Um,
Absolutely.
as the religious group is trying to quote unquote save her. Um, but that slow burn, that whole, she doesn't even know what's going on yet. She's only getting the perspective from this group and then starting to feel some of it as it comes on. So the climax of going to the actual beast and then even going further and she can control the on off switch of it all to the transformation there at the end with the confrontation with the one guy. That the way the tone of the film worked, that all worked very well.
Love it. And
Having the
there's
beast throughout that, then you got a different movie. You've got a
completely.
slasher monster film at that stage, and that's not what this was. I liked where you went with it.
Yeah, we were trying to do a bit more of a Chekhov's werewolf. You hint that it's coming and then reveal
Gotta
and
put it
kill
in
it.
the
Whereas if
third
you start
act.
something else. Exactly. But no, there was actually something you'd said, Thomas, that I also had kept in my mind. I remember in your review saying that this could also be like the neophyte stage. This could be
Mhm.
that first transformation, and we're continuing to move and shift.
Sure.
And that's definitely the thought that we were having when we were talking of maybe she's on her way towards. And I think the only thing that's then caused people to look at it in a slightly different light is in between us making it and releasing it was the Nosferatu film coming out. They were going, oh, this looks a bit like Nosferatu. It's like, yes, there are similarities, but
Yes.
we were going for this, and here are the differences, and not a problem. But yeah, as I say, there was stuff that you guys picked up on the world building that I tried to put in there that I was so
Mhm.
gratified hearing. It's like, oh, you've picked up what I'm putting down. Fantastic. And even to that point, it being a slow burn was always the thought of I know that we're doing this tight. I know that we don't have infinite funds and infinite time. So it needs to be a character study. It needs to be
Mhm.
a metaphor explained and expressed and explored. And one of my big inspirations, actually, there's an amazing dialogue scene in the film Hunger. Now, again, not saying that we're anywhere near that level because the cast in that are spectacular. And they, with their funds and abilities, the two actors in particular, Michael Fassbender and I forget the gentleman's name, who played the Onion Knight in Game of Thrones. But the two of them being members of, I believe it's the IRA, with Michael Fassbender threatening to go on a hunger strike or starting a hunger
Mhm.
strike and saying, we're going on it. The Onion Knight coming in and being a member of the clergy saying, hey, leadership's telling you to stop, stop. And this incredible, it's like a 10-minute dialogue between the two with only one camera set up. It's got a very slow, gentle push, and only in the last 2 minutes does it change to an over shoulder shot. And I remember watching that and going, what they've done is they've given the actors the room to breathe.
Mhm.
They've given them material and they've said, run with it. And so, with a lot of these moments of the characters stuck and talking to each other, the characters with longer monologues, I wanted to explore their characters and go, look, let's just get some good cast in and give them a chance to cook. And we, I think, really got that. I loved what Lauren brought. Julian, who played Thomas, I think did a spectacular job. And my God, Shannon, who played our deep, creepy sister Elise. There are people on set who are running away from her, just trying not to look her in the eye. She is the sweetest, gentlest lady you'll ever meet. But my God, you saw that darkness come over her face, and she was terrifying.
I,
Oh,
I I grew up
sadistic.
going to Catholic education. She's who we envisioned all of them were.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah, no, your
And
cast
yeah,
was spectacular, and I like the fact that it was one of the things that I liked about the film, and I mentioned in the review, is that you gave them that mental connection. The people that were
mm,
that had been cursed with this, whatever it was, could go to like their little shared mind castles or something to talk, and that's where a lot of the exposition, that's where a lot of the characters got to actually interact and discuss things, because the rest of the film doesn't really lend itself to that. Uh, uh, the character of Jessica, if she wants any information, she's not going to get it from the people that are torturing her. She can ask the questions, and they're going to answer with putting a nail in her hand or slicing open her back. So she has to go to that metaphysical plane, whatever, and that's where the actors actually get to interact.
completely. And look, and that was by design twofold. Part of it was absolutely we need to get a vehicle for exposition because otherwise the audience is going to be there with Jessica the entire time going, what the hell is going on? But I wanted to, and this is again central to the theme of everything we were trying to get into the film, the idea of what is a monster? Where does this come from? And so often in the werewolf film, in the whole genre, it is a mindless, slathering creature. It comes out, it rips people apart because that's what it does. And instead, I wanted to get to what if this is just a creature itself? The idea of it being a sexually transmitted virus was the after effect rather than the catalyst. It was more about what is a werewolf? It is a creature of passion, right? They are violent and extreme and flowing with the tides of the moon. They're being dragged in these different directions. They follow their heart, they follow their passions. So they'd be creative, they'd be artists, they'd be passionate. You've got violence is one type of passion, but you've got sex is another kind of passion. And so then the idea of it being a passion virus that is passed through passion, that then if you have a group such as a very regressive, very conservative, fundamentalist group would look at that and go, look at how out of control these are. And you can imagine at some point in time them going, they need to be stopped because they are sinful in their ways. And then on top of that, if you've got something that is so passionate, you try and squash it, it's going to lash out. And so the idea being, are they monsters because of their nature, or are they monsters because we turn them into monsters by harassing them and haranguing them and chasing them, which all gets into that metaphor of how we treat people in the real world. So all of this kind of leads into another, which then, of course, if we're talking werewolves, you've also got the idea of packs and wolves being able to communicate with each other to hunt. So I wanted to try and make these creatures, while still fitting in the werewolf genre, be something a bit more fleshed out, a bit more unique, and a bit more realistic to be a thing that can exist, rather than just terrifying monster once a month and then gone.
And that's part of what I was really enjoying and taking away from this is since you touched on the notion of what does it mean to be a monster, part of what I was taking away is the site, okay, we're following somebody who is going to turn into a beast of some kind, but the people she's dealing with are the actual monsters.
Absolutely.
They're the ones othering everybody what is happening, and you touching on that notion of passion. Yeah, the idea that because this group can't understand that group, then they must be evil, and hopefully to those that watch, they'll get that notion that as soon as you feel the need to provide judgment over others, you're probably on the wrong side at that stage.
Completely. And look, and I wanted to present this metaphor within my own beliefs, but without being didactic as to how to
Sure.
believe it. You can look at a character like say Elise. She is, to me, and we had long conversations about this, but she's much more a character who would have been brought up within this regressive environment, indoctrinated deeply, probably very frustrated, and finds enjoyment at the times that she's able to lash out. She almost enjoys that maliciousness too much. But then you get characters like Scott and Thomas, who are the gentler priests, who have their own doubts. They have their own reasons for going in the directions they go to. And then when you get to that moment at the end, you've got Thomas has been a person who has suffered tragedy in his life that drove him to being indoctrinated and absorbed into this cult. And then as he starts to wobble and think, instead of wobbling in a, maybe I should get out, because you can't break free once you've been put into those clutches, he more goes, but maybe I can save her. Maybe she can replace the love that I lost. Maybe she can be my atonement. If I can fix her, I can make up for the past, and everything's going to be better. Turning a blind eye to the horrors that they're inflicting, only for her to then suddenly become this monster that kills everyone he knows, and at the last minute goes, if you come after me, I'll kill you too. It's like, they were right all along, you were the monster. And so this whole thing of people looking for the information that supports their belief. As I say, I went quite deep into the metaphors of what I wanted to talk about in terms of how we vilify each other in the real world. And that then went in a certain direction, which informed a lot of the spaces we walked in.
Well, and any successful sci-fi and fantasy should make you think about the deeper world around you. And I think you actually got there.
That's really gratifying to hear. Again, art is subjective. People will enjoy it or they won't enjoy it. People will find the parts that really resonate with them or not. I think we've got some really beautiful things in here. Again, considering all the things we went through to get to where we got to, I think we've managed to pull something that I'm quite happy with.
To this moment, my only critiques have mostly been technical. Love a little bit more lighting at times.
Sure.
And some continuity. The nails in the hand thing bugged me.
No! Oh my goodness!
Come on, Peter.
No!
Do better.
Look, that is actually a hilarious. I say hilarious. We'd had a day.
I'm sure. This is the joy of having this conversation. Is now you can tell us why that happened.
We'd had Thomas come up with the stripping of the ankle and doing this wonderful prosthetic for us and being like, I'm going to crucify that. And in the scene where her back is being ripped open, which is if you look up your history, it is actually a way they used to try and treat werewolves. They would strip down the laser skin and stuff the wolf's bane underneath. And in that moment, I originally had her tied to the table, and he went, why are we tying her to the table? I've got these nails. We'll just nail her to it. And I went, oh my God, that's fantastic. The nails look spectacular. And we shot that scene, moved on. And again, we're hammering through all the scenes in certain rooms were done on that day, everything out of order. Pun always intended. But so we get to the morning of Thomas and Jessica going into the cage. And so that's the first thing of the day. We've got that. We've got the whole long monologue. We've got then the scene of her breaking out happened that same day. So we had our fight choreographer, who, my God, I adore that man. Cam Douglas did a wonderful job for us. We were just back to back to back. And I remember, because it was a more of the prosthetics change for the hands, there'd been some kind of note somewhere lost along the way. A few different steps didn't pick it up. And again, we were moving at breakneck speed. We're talking 16 to 18 hour days, 6 to 7 days a week for the 4 to 5 weeks we're going. It was a lot. And then I'd come home and review rushes, or I'd be going over notes for the next day and emailing people. There's not a lot of sleep happening. But we had that morning come, and we'd had a few little hiccups in that first morning. Someone in crew had actually left their phone running. So halfway through one of the first monologue goes,
Oh no.
poor Thomas is right in the middle of, and you got this bit going on, we're all like, oh God. So we had a few kind of false starts. We finally managed to get the flow going, and I actually was the first to notice, but we got to about the second setup, and at this point in time, the second setup, maybe third setup, but we'd gone through the entire scene from multiple angles at this point in time. Mm-hmm. And I looked and I'm like, we've done the wides. Because in filmmaking, you always start with the wide shots and move into the close-ups. You've then got your blocking. If you started up close, an actor might move in a slightly different position and then everything falls apart. So you do your blocking first and then you do your wide shot, capture it, and then narrow in. And before, I think we'd just done one close-up. And as we're narrowing in, I stopped and I just had that tingle in the back of my head. And I went, I am not going to say anything right now because there's nothing I can do about that in this.
Right.
And especially right now, we're doing facial close-ups. About an hour later, my continuity guy comes over to me and goes, isn't she supposed to have holes in her hand? Yep, I am aware. I managed to get a quiet chat to my cinematographer, and I just say to him, please don't give anything away. Don't panic anyone. We don't want to lose the performance quality. And right. I think that was one of the big things. Like, you guys watch a ton of films and you spend a lot of time analyzing them. It was on that Christmas Down Under. We had a dialogue scene of 4 characters in a car. And if you've ever done a car scene, you know that headrests are the bane of your existence because they get in the way of everything. So the headrests have been moved out of the way so we could get a better angle. But the camera had actually been a bit too wide, and so you could just see those silver holes where the headrest is supposed to go. And I remember having a heated conversation with the director and the producer after the edit had gone through, where the producer was going, this whole scene is garbage. We need to toss it out. I don't know if we can organize reshoots. It's taken 2 years in post and all of that type of thing. And the director said something that stuck with me, which was, if our audience in the middle of a fast back and forth banter dialogue scene of jokes is sitting there going, hang on a second, where's the headrest? We've got a bigger problem. We've got a problem that people aren't watching the scene. Mm-hmm. They're looking around at what's in the background. We've already lost them at that point. So how about we just trust the actors? And so my main concern was Thomas, or Julian, who played Thomas, is a wonderful actor, and he would get himself into these emotional states beforehand. And I wanted to let him fly, and I wanted to give him the chance to have that continuity of monologue. So the last thing I wanted to do was disrupt him further. So I turned to the cinematographer and said, look, frame around the hands as best you can. Yeah. We're going to deal with this at the end of it. And he did. And he did a wonderful job of doing that. Then, of course, within seconds, Julian picks Lauren's hand up and starts kissing it. I'm like, no! What are you doing? And then just before we move on, we're like, okay, that's the end of that scene. And we're getting ready for the next scene. I'm like, great, we've got the same cast. Everything's going to be the same. I turned to my first AD and said, I would like to have a talk to the guy who's doing our post-production effects. I'd also like to have a talk to makeup. I'd like to have a quiet conversation of what our options are. And she was going, why, what's wrong? I'm like, yeah, she's got no holes in her hands. And the blood drained from my first AD's face. Had some frantic conversations. We did mock up something of the hands. We did reshoot that early sequence with something mocked up, but in the edit, it didn't look as good. And so we just kind of got to that point of, look, we've established that when she gets moments of passion, things heal. She heals soon afterwards. Let's have that Stanley no prize of, congratulations, you found it. Here is your no prize, sir. But yes, thank you, Thomas. You've got a no prize. That was a moment that, again, it was that hilarious stress on set. But also we went, look, if they're noticing that, they're not necessarily paying attention to Julian's monologue, and I think he delivered that monologue beautifully, and I wouldn't want him to have that damaged. So,
In this
Honestly,
case, go
the
ahead.
where I picked it up, I think it was only because Tom mentioned it too in the review, is that when she's get put back in her cage, her shirt has blood stains in the back and everything. So it just gets your mind looking for
of
the
course,
wounds. And there's this, it's like an overhead shot, and she's crawling in the cage, and you see her hand from above.
yeah.
That's and there's nothing there. That's honestly
There's
that's the first time I noticed it, and after that, it's like, well, it's not there. I'm not going to go looking for it for the rest of the film. It was just something that jumped out at me at just that one moment.
yeah,
And
no,
you have to be in
absolutely.
my brain. I can do two things at once in that. I can
What is
pick
that
up on the
like?
crazy. I can pick on the continuity issue and still enjoy the performance that is happening. But so
Absolutely.
rarely do I get the opportunity to go, hey, what happened there?
And the hilarious thing was, while listening to your review of it, I remember you guys getting to that moment, and I yelled out loud while laughing, "Oh no, they saw it!" I think you guys are the only ones I've heard say that. I don't think I've seen anyone else pick up on it. So thank you for putting that out into the world.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah,
Yeah, you're totally welcome.
it is so minor. I'll admit. It's just it was kind of towards
Oh,
the
but
end
look,
of the review. We're kind of winding up, and it was just sort of like, well, and there was that.
hang on a
Yeah.
second. And look, every film has got their gaffes
They
and their
do.
goofs
They
and
absolutely
issues.
do.
I think back to, I don't know if you guys are as deep into sci-fi as I am, but Joss Whedon's Firefly,
Mhm.
the very pilot episode, this wonderful moment when they've escaped the Reavers and they're flying off in their ship. If you look at the director's commentary, they talk about it, where they had to pull things back from the camera back to get a wide enough shot. And you've got dear Alan Tudyk doing an amazing job flying with Nathan Fillion him over his shoulder, patting him on the back, and they're like, yeah, everything's great. Alan Tudyk has nothing in his hand. There
Yes.
are no, he has no controls. He's had to move back far enough, and he is miming that he has controls. And that's the shot. So these type of things, they happen.
Yep.
They
Do
do.
what you can to move on with them, and honestly, there's some part of it that I think is actually quite endearing. That when you see that and go, "Hey, I feel like I'm on the inside path of the
Oh
filmmaking
no,
process."
it is. I've definitely watched films, big budget, low budget, doesn't matter. It's even more fun when it's like big budget Hollywood blockbuster film, and
Completely.
you watch something and go, the effects guys completely missed that window. It is still entirely green,
And,
or
oh my god,
uh,
right? And I think
or
that's the big thing because when you think of those big budget productions, they've got per scene that you watch, they might have 4, 5, or even a week or a month of we can sit here. We're going back into this room. We're going back and doing this scene again today.
Mhm.
Whereas with us, it was in most cases 2 or 3 takes. Let's move on. There was one shot in particular. There was a day that we'd managed to get ahead on schedule, and it's actually a moment where they've killed the werewolf Caleb, and the priests are there, kind of like inspecting the body, and you've got Father Tokumato who's come down and is looking in closely and kind of stands up. We've got this kind of low, almost like the cover of an album shot with the angel and the devil over his shoulders. And I remember that shot. We were getting framing slightly tweaked on each version, and we looked at our time and we're like, we've got the shot, but we've got heaps of time. Let's just run it a couple of extra times and see what pops up. See if we've got anything else come through. And we got to like a fifth take, I think, and my first AD came over to me and was like, What's wrong? I said, I'd like it again, please. No, no, but what's happened? What's going on? What's wrong? And I leant forward and said, our cinematographer left the lens cap on. She just went pale. He's laughing his head off. And I'm like, just one more time, please. Because it was so alien for us to be in that situation where we had the ability to go, let's craft this a bit more. Let's rest and relax into it. Because everything was just go, go, go.
Yeah, but you gotta love the let's do it one more time so it actually makes it into the film.
yeah,
Yeah. Oh, again, I think the shot that we used was probably like the second or third take. So we'd had it,
Yeah.
but it's just there was actually even just things like there's a moment where she locks up the bar. It's only one shot in there because one shots are very time consuming and difficult. But she locks up the bar and walks into the car park. And that was end of the day. We were running out of time. It was freezing cold. For context, we shot this in winter. So, and in Melbourne, for you Fahrenheit viewers, it was around 28, 29 degrees throughout the
Chili.
entirety of the shoot. So it was chilly. particularly for dear Lauren when she was in the full prosthetics, which was a glorified bathing suit blended with makeup, shot at midnight as it started to sleet. But walking from the bar to the car park, I think we got 4 or 5 takes on it, and part of that's just the nature of one is that you're like, got to get the focus, got to get the lighting.
Yep.
But we had time to get it one more, and on that one more time, no one else will notice it, but there was this moment where a gust of wind picked up and it flared her hair at about halfway the walk across. And I went, oh, thank goodness, because I'd started to go, we're stuck to the location that we've got,
Yeah.
but this one shot's going to get trimmed because there's a lot of her just walking with nothing happening. And just that one little bit of visual interest of her hair flaring was enough to make the one shot work. And it made me just go, okay, now we're going to keep it. Now it's working.
Yeah.
And it's only happened because we had a fourth or a fifth take of this one shot that the wind happened to blow. And that's the luxury that you get when you've got the time and the money to really go through. Whereas for us, as I say, there were some of the days were running, and credit due to my DOP and electrical crew, those guys were insane. And when the chips were down, there were times where they'd be passing the camera around, passing reflectors around as the actors are getting through. And it's like, okay, cool, first lady's calling it, and camera, and you'd see my DOP swing the camera onto his shoulder and just be like, set! And it was this insane, everyone's in position at the exact second they need. There was, again, just giving you stories now.
No, love them.
There was this wonderful moment on the full werewolf day in the car park. She's just murdered someone and she stands up from his body. And we were out of time. We were into overtime, and that's real danger zone. Like, we need to get this, we need to get it right. And so we'd shot a wider version of this shot. And again, Lauren at this point in time, she's had 10 hours in the chair or more. She'll call me up and correct me, like, Peter, it was 13 hours. How dare you? Those are 3 hours of my life. But she'd had all this time. She'd had difficulty eating because of the teeth, because of everything locked in. And we're now, like, she'd been in the chair at like 4 or 5 in the morning, and we're now getting in towards midnight. And it's freezing cold. She's shaking. She's getting lightheaded. We're like, we don't have long, even if we want to push it overtime, we don't have long before we torture this actor. We need to wrap this up. And so she's in this shot, and I turn to the DOP, and I'm like, we need to get it closer. And he's like, cool, we're moving on to the next one. Has a quick whisper to his team. He's like, just don't cut. And so we just done resets, because all she was doing was going down and standing up menacingly. It's like, cool, go down, stand up menacingly. And I yelled out, reset, and these guys pick up something like, $100,000 or more of camera equipment. And while she goes from standing to crouching, they sprint, me with them, someone holding the split for me to look in, sprint halfway across this car park. My DOP skids down to his knees, gravel flying everywhere. There were still rusty nails in this damn place. And he launches that camera onto his shoulder and he goes, set! It's like, cool, and action. And she just stands up again, and it's beautiful. The lens flares, and we're just like, we were high-fiving after this. And I was like, cool, and cut. Lauren, go get a goddamn blanket on you. Oh, my goodness. And it was just, that thrill that you get from the indie filmmaking of, we need to get these moments, we need to get them now, because if we don't get it now, we're never getting it. We don't get this moment, we need to cut that character. So it was a lot of high pace, freneticness, but it meant that we got some really cool stuff on the, the time that we had. And I'm, very grateful to the team of cast and crew for the work they did to get us that.
No, it definitely shows and comes through in the film that you had a fantastic team, that everybody seemed to be in the right place at the right time for this one. Now, Tom and I both said that the third act, when Jessica kind of begins her transformation, she really begins to take agency in the film and takes control of the situation. That's where this movie takes off for both of us.
Yes.
And look, and that was very much intentional. Again, backload the film, get the character pieces, make you feel about the characters, and then let's do something with it. In my mind, even though it's supposed to be parodying of the whole idea of it, but my brain was going, it's the Hot Fuzz structure. It's, here's the creepy town, the creepy village, and then, now we're just going to open up all barrels and really pay off what we're setting up. But I also think that's something that's fairly traditional within the horror world, that we're not that outlandish. Indie sleeper horror film that I absolutely adored was Late Phases. Don't know if you guys are aware of this one.
I don't know that one, but I'm going to look it up.
Go and check it out. It's wonderful. It's a blind war veteran being checked in with his guide dog into an aged care community. And it just so happens that there are werewolves in this community, and they attack early on. Not giving too many spoilers, but at one point he's there without his dog, without his cane, and this grumpy, curmudgeonly guy is walking around with a shovel as a stick. Like he's using it as his walking stick to feel around. And you have this very slow burn of him talking to the local priest and meeting the homeowners ladies who are just that little bit too Stepford creepy. And there is very little in terms of full out horror action until your act three when the werewolves finally do come for him. And he has this almost, I was going to say straw dogs, but it's almost more Home Alone moment of the war veteran has set up the traps. He's there with his rifle. He's like, I am blind, but I will take out 3 or 4 werewolves coming for me. Did it beautifully. But again, that's that same indie horror loaded. I think even if you look at like the Ginger Snaps films, it did something very similar. That you've got that big transformation at the end, but you've got to try and get the information across that make people care about it. So we went for something very similar in that.
Well, what I think both were hoping for is that third act, that big build up, and then the big reveal, and they're like, okay, this is Jessica. She is awesome. We're kind of both hoping that this was setting up a world that we might revisit in the future. Is there any plans for a second Moon?
I mean, look, within the film industry, a lot of that is always driven by reception.
Sure.
You know, so if people turn around and said, we love this, we want this, then absolutely. At the same time, if you're doing the work in the world building, you're always thinking of where the story was before and where the story goes next. And that was always something that I was thinking about. What would happen to Jessica's character? Where is she going after this? She is now out in the world. She is filled with these new powers and also the trauma that could set her on the path to be this dark and horrible creature that they've tried to create. At the same time, where did this stuff come from? What is it? Who is she? Why is she? So, yeah, no, I had long late night conversations. Again, with us being in these Airbnbs, I was there with the prosthetics artist Thomas, who was vegan. I'm not vegan myself. I'd not explored it. And he went, I'm vegan. I will cook for you. And I was waking up in the morning to fresh baked scones, and I'd come home. He's like, I've made a vegan sushi platter, which was one of the best things I've ever tasted. He was taking care of us, which was wonderful. But so we'd sit down, and then the DOP would come in, and the three of us would sit down and talk and just have long pontificating conversations about, so who is she? And they'd ask me questions of, what were you intending with this? And where would you go with that? And Thomas is, again, so well connected in the world. He's like, oh, I could get you this actor, or let me talk to this person if you ever get to that moment. So I'd love to explore the themes that we put down here, and I'd love to explore the world further, absolutely. Always about opportunity. Always about opportunity. So
if not film, comic books.
no, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And again, which much easier, but still requires the right team, the right artists, the right, well, again, both the pencilers, letterers, colorists. Like there's so
We're
many
just
people
adding to
involved
your
in the
to-do
process.
list. That's all.
Oh, guys, I am bogged down already. I've been working on multiple films since. Yeah, this was my big directing foray, and I have got plans for more films to direct in the future. I've got one that I'm in the scripting process and working with producers on at the moment, but I've also got 4 or 5 other films that I'm working on and scripting. I write multiple films at a time, so I'm busy. I'm busy. It's
busy.
good to be busy.
Well,
I'm
no,
busy.
kudos to you for being busy. That's
Right.
That's the trick. It took a lot of time trapped in my university apartment eating 2-minute noodles trying to figure out how to get that going. But no,
No,
it's
that's the
happening
dream.
anyway.
You want to hear that somebody who put their mind and heart to something is actually making good of it. That's awesome.
Oh, and look, at the same time, I mean, I've been doing definitely passion projects, and it's. I had a mentor at one point said, you know that old saying, 1 for the money, 2 for the show? It's like, yeah, do 1 to get the money and another to get the show. And at first I was like, oh, that's the way you've got to do it. You've got to do the crappy job you don't want. But actually, I've been doing a bunch of low budget films for direct television work. And they've actually been really wonderful. My producer and that has been such a generous and interesting guy. His feedback's been fantastic. He just wants to make good quality films. And even though there are times I've been writing, I wrote a couple of rom-coms with these guys. I
Mhm.
actually did one, Vote One for Love, which was absolutely, again, a tragic type of concept where we have a person being plugged to try and run for local town governor type of, or to mayor to then tag to go up higher, and all this ridiculousness of a person, an operative from DC coming in to try and get him bigger in the world, and they fall in love, but also he was her bully in high school and he's come good and all this type of stuff. But at its core, I managed to, I think, thread the needle of we talked about politics without ever once mentioning left wing, right wing, Democrat, Republican, any of that, but
Yeah.
just talk about people, concepts, values, and there was something interesting about trying to get a message across to an audience while also having the remit of this is a film that is intended. The way it was described to me is these films are intended to be watched by your middle American housewife while she's folding the laundry, and maybe it's engaging enough that by the end of the film she hasn't quite folded everything. And so I'm like literally, there are things that are, if it's too evocative of the real world, it's got to go. If it's
Mm.
slightly traumatic, it's got to go. But you still need tension. So there's threads to kind of be able to pull with that. And so even when writing those type of films, which some people would watch and go, "Oh, look, this is a terrible film," trying to put something in there that is of meaning and a message that can connect with an audience is actually something
Mm.
really fulfilling. So I've been doing those while then also working with some insanely talented filmmakers, some of whom like dwarf what I've done. There's one project in particular. I'm working with a director called Nick Kazakis, co-writing with a girl named Steph Troost, and this thing we just had a short film. It's a horror. We had a short film kind of proof of concept of it over at Sitges, um, and very well received. And we're just in the last stages of drafting that, and they're looking to put that one out. And it's
Nice.
going to be a decent budget, dark horror thing, and I'm super pumped because it's talking about things at a level that I've always wanted to talk about.
Sweet.
So we've got some
Wow.
cool stuff happening, but
I
that's the
want to hear
stuff that's
more about that as it develops.
Yeah,
oh,
absolutely.
absolutely.
No,
I'll be shouting that from the rooftop.
you're definitely going to be one of the names that we're going to keep our ear to the rail for, and watch out. But I guess you can't really look on your with your ear to the rail. You're going to be one of those names that we're going to look for.
Use
For
all of your senses, sir. I will do what I can to keep in your
Hey,
radar.
hey, hey, listen, do you smell that?
yeah, but definitely be looking for future projects from you because both writing and directing.
Mm.
Because this was a really great first step for us, in our opinion, anyway.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
And we will keep our fingers crossed that it does well and we get that sequel and you get
Yeah. Oh, look,
everyone back.
even there was even thoughts in my mind of maybe go sequel, maybe try and go towards more of an episodic format, maybe go like more television based with it because then you can be exploring themes and craft the world bigger and yeah, there's lots
Absolutely.
of opportunities.
Yeah, we have seen many a film where we've walked away going, yeah, it was good, but they touched on this and they touched on this and they touched on this and they couldn't explore any of it. And it would be so much better in a long form story, like a short-lived series or something like that, something streaming where you could spend an hour each on each of these topics. Yeah.
Completely, completely. And then be within that, you can explore the different worlds that are created with this. I mean, I know you guys talked about it a bit, but the idea of we've got this group of monster hunters,
Yeah.
like the church themselves, the Order of the Waning Moon, like they exist for a reason. What is that reason? What else is out there? This is one particular task force that has been hunting down this one guy across the world for years, presumably since Father Tukmata was a young man. So who else is out there? You know, at the very end, you know, he's there breaking antique chairs, unfortunately. But he's there getting his phone out and calling through someone and saying, "Hey guys, we are compromised. This thing is loose. We need you to come in." And that then begs the question of were these guys a more radical cell doing things outlandish or were they more tame?
I
How big
even
is this organization? What else do they do?
Hmm.
I even remember commenting on that. As much as we got great character development, I wanted some more background on that group and where they come from. But I'm also going to get in a nice little thing. Nice job sneaking in the Torquemada thing.
Thank you, thank you,
It's a
thank you.
nice reference.
It's oh look, I struggle naming people without having a method or a reason to it. So normally I'll go for names that have reasons to it. Even Thomas himself, like we're talking
Hmm.
religious parables, the doubting Thomas,
Hmm.
like he is the one who's going, "Well, I'm not sure what I'm doing." So
Yep.
there's elements of this. There's got to be a reason for everything.
No, I was very
And yeah,
much enjoying the little references you could pick up from other things. It was great.
Yeah.
and
No,
yeah,
and
having a person doing torturing, like we didn't want to get the full Judas chair out or anything, but
Right.
there's definitely elements of wanting to get through.
yeah. Well, I think my biggest criticism that I talked about is the fact that we didn't know enough about the religious order
Hmm.
and that we really couldn't connect with them as being anything other than the bad guys. You know,
Absolutely.
did they think they were doing the right thing? Did they have any conflict? You couldn't, there wasn't enough time
Yeah.
to spend with them to get that. And that was my biggest complaint of the film, my biggest criticism that I talked about. So
No,
yeah,
absolutely. And look, and if we'd had more time, it would have been wonderful to spend
Sure.
time with Thomas and Scott in particular, being those dissenting voices
Hmm.
and having them in moments where they're doubting themselves. Um, and so, in order to kind of move away from needing to do that, that's why I made sure to not have those two in the scene together. And anytime we had Thomas, when he's in there going, even from the very opening sequence, where he's going, "Look, I'm losing the taste for this."
Hmm.
Having him with Elise, who is such a devout zealot, going, "Yeah, okay, it sucks, but we're doing what we're supposed to be doing."
Right.
Like we're close to getting him, and then we'll be able to move on to the next thing. You don't need to worry much longer. We're getting there, and he's the one going, "Oh yeah, but I don't like what we're doing."
right.
Even to the point where he's having that conversation with the boyfriend, having to say like, "Look, we've only saved one person like this before."
Yeah, no, I was going to comment on that. That whole and it just rails against the current world order. You're so certain you're doing the right thing until you're actually faced with the data.
Exactly,
We've
and then
done this
even
how
within
long
that,
and
and
one?
it's done once, and even then, and that one time, were you sure he was infected?
Right.
Are you sure that you actually saved that person and this is not just an anecdotal coincidence?
Right.
That
That's
were
not
they the same type of creature or were they something else? Did you pick up an innocent dude who happened to be a different kind of monster in this world and went, "Hey, hallelujah,
right.
he's cured"?
Yeah, yeah,
Like,
great job.
or even was he able to conceal it from you? Like, there's so many questions around. If you've only had this work once, you've got these elaborate rituals going through hundreds of years, and what? Yeah, calling into question people's hard-held beliefs. There was
Yes.
I forget now who it was. There was a comedian who used a phrase that stuck with me of all information that you have, especially as you become an adult, starts to get disseminated into the two groups of something I can absolutely say, "I read this from this place," or "crap, someone told me." Some guy told me at some point. I heard it somewhere. But the problem is that both of those bits of information, as we get older, get more stagnant and solidified into hard felt beliefs. And so you get to this point of, why do you believe this? Why do you stab her through the hand, naming her and chucking flowers at her if you've only saved one person? What are you talking about? It's like, oh, because that's what we do. It works. You just said it didn't. What? So it's, yeah,
The death of
very,
growth is certainty.
Yeah.
yes.
Well, we're starting to like go backwards and get deeper into this film and everything, and I know we're kind of coming up to where we need to say goodbye. So
Absolutely. Well, look, again, it's one of those things I could regale you with anecdotes or bore you intensely with the backdrop and motivations for
No,
how.
well, we'll just
dig in the passion, but you have other things to do too, sir.
yeah,
Oh, I
yeah.
do indeed.
So what I'm hoping is that in the future we will get another opportunity to talk, and
Absolutely would love that.
you can continue to regale us with either,
Yes.
and have you'll have even more stories to tell. Is there any place do you have social media or website or anything that people can kind of
Follow you along
Yeah.
on.
Look, I'm really terrible at keeping up with social media. I am Clouded Page on Instagram, but you find that through if you check out the First Moon Instagram page or One Tree Entertainment. I think I'm kind of bounced up around those a fair bit. But no, I tend to when there's a project on the go, I tend to try and be a bit more diligent with it. But I'm bad at doing that. I made a
understood?
concerted effort during the film. If you're curious about the production of the film, I made a point with First Moon of every day on set, I get up in the morning and do a little piece to camera and put that on my Insta. So there is a little kind
Nice.
of kind of background. I think the main thing you can see across the course of that is while on set and with those ridiculous hours, I do not like to shave. Last thing I want to do is cut myself at 4 in the morning and be bleeding for an hour. So you get to see the set beard progress to go from the clean shaven individual I normally am to quite a thick and, in this instance, more salt than pepper coating. So it aged me, and it made me look a lot more aged than the film
That's
actually should offer.
I feel you.
yeah.
Oh,
No, that's fantastic. I remember an anecdote from the old Doctor Who actor Patrick Troughton,
oh yes.
who would go to conventions, as the doctor, and whenever he's on film, he's always clean shaven. But every time you saw him at a convention, he'd have a beard. And he always said, you could tell how long I haven't worked by how long my beard is.
Oh,
It's quite the
wonderful.
measurement of success.
Yeah. Oh,
Oh,
yeah.
I love that.
So people should go check out the First Moon Instagram. I know that you did like a reel where you were showed like the transformation, or at least some of the makeup, doing the face and shoulder mold of
Yep.
Lauren for her makeup and everything. And so it's a elapsed time thing.
Yep.
Really neat, really interesting
Absolutely.
to see if you're
I can't remember
curious
if they've
about that.
got because I know they put the original casting of that up, and then on my phone itself, I actually took a time lapse of her in the chair on the day. So I don't know if they've put both up. I know the first one was up. If they haven't done the second, they will be doing the second. They may have been holding off on that because monster reveals and all the rest. I know it's on the
Sure.
poster, but just to
Yeah.
see the full thing. So
Yeah.
there is more to come as the launch and the release goes off across other countries and as time goes on. So
Excellent. So yeah, if you're hearing this, at least here in the States, First Moon is available on your streaming services. Go and check it out. Peter, thank you so much for taking some time out of your day and talking with us. And I can't wait to have a chance to talk with you again.
Yeah.
thanks, guys. Chris,
Yeah.
Tom, it's been
Thank you
an
so much.
absolute pleasure talking to you both.